truth is immutable. The money is decentralized.
The Genesis locked to the edge of the mempool. We are decoding Bitcoin's signal in the noise. Privacy, self-custody, censorship resistance. Welcome to the revolution. This is OnChain Revolution.
Welcome back to OnChain Revolution. My name is Yagobi, and I am your host for the show. We got a lot to get into today, guys. Is there a best case scenario for Bitcoin and alts? Well, the bulls seem to think so. They are really hyper focusing on the ISM indicator and what that looks like in terms of being correlated to Bitcoin and alt tokens, right? Altcoins. And so we're going to dive into that and try to figure out, is it real or is it just Hopium, what they're looking into? Because if you go through a lot of the narratives that have been kind of, try to be pushed through, there's been a lot, right? You can go back to M2 money supply, which I was, a big, proponent of. I thought it was really, really solid until it wasn't. And that's how narratives work sometimes, right? And then you have, Sailor constantly buying, and that's like another narrative that continually pushed the price up. But this one, we're going to dive into some data because there's some strong data that does correlate with a possible good, scenario and setup for Bitcoin. So we'll get into that. But before we get into anything, we're going to start off with a market pulse here. But before we get into anything, I'm going to ask you guys to help me out on the YouTube side. Smash that like, subscribe to the channel. It helps me a ton. On the X side, guys, let's share this space. Let's get as many people in here as possible. And I do want to shout out the abstract community. I apologize. I wasn't able to get to your comments yesterday. Kind of getting used to, maneuvering around and figuring out how to get to all the chats, right, from different platforms. So I appreciate you being patient with me. I do have your chat up in here, so just drop your comments in there. And then, of course, for the main chat on X and YouTube, just drop your comments in the chat and I will get to your comments accordingly. But let's start off with a market pulse. Okay, let's see what's happening here because it does look like Bitcoin, before I just started the show here, Bitcoin and Ethereum were pulling back a bit, but now it seems like, it's a little bit mixed, right? You can see that we have the last hour, I guess you can see this candle did pull back up. But if you're looking at the overall market, you can see that the stock market is, almost even. The NASDAQ is down almost a point. The S&P is down almost half a point. So yeah, it is a little bit more on the downside, but you do see Dow Jones being slightly up. The VIX is up about 4.4%, which means volatility is up, right? The one area of the stock market that is just continually surprises me is the Russell 2000 being stronger than the other parts of the stock market here, right? So if this continually shows strength, this could also play into what we're going to go over today as well. And what we talked about, I would say maybe at the end of last week in terms of the global liquidity going up as well. And then you see, the Mag 7, the Magnificent 7 down almost a point. Some of these big players, Nvidia is down about 3 points. So that's bad. And then you're seeing Google, Apple, and Tesla kind of, just barely in the green there. But you see Bitcoin and Ethereum, yesterday we did have a pretty decent day. And so just slight pullbacks, right? Bitcoin pulling down 1% and then Ethereum pulling down 2% here. But the big story of the day is the precious metals. You're seeing gold up 6% and silver up 11.5%. I mean, silver was down to like $72 and you're seeing it now. I mean, back almost to $90, right? So a huge climb back up for silver and gold as well. I mean, gold's market cap is so big. So imagine what, 6% increase is on the day. So, for the precious metal people out there, I was a bit worried that, people that bought that local top were just getting massacred, and some of you guys did, but it looks like the bounce back is definitely in effect right now, right? Let's get to some of these comments real quick. We got Superfan. I was on a call with him yesterday. We got some exciting things in the works there. Jason Sinkar says GM XCN, and then Varying Viewpoint says GM, and then Cheedy, what is up? Cheedy says, what's up, Yagobi? What is going on, guys? All right, so like I mentioned, the bulls are definitely hyper focused on this best case scenario with the ISM, and we're going to dive into that because I think that there's some really good data, but it also is, I feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. But there's going to be some other stuff that we're going to hit on today once we're done with kind of the price action and this main topic. We're going to hit on the government shutdown, what the status looks like. Polymarket has some interesting stats with that. We're going to hit on, the White House meeting with the crypto centralized exchanges and some banks to discuss stable coins. The banking institutions are really worried about losing that business. And the White House met with them. And we're going to get into that as well. We're going to hit on Tether, what they're looking to do to kind of expand their global footprint. And then Ethereum staking entry queue extends to 71 days. So we'll dive into that as well. And then for the Bitcoin ecosystem, we'll wrap it up there and hit on the BRC20 phase 2, which is interesting. And they're really hyper focusing on rats and Ordi. And we'll get into that as well to kind of end the show there. But yeah, so let's dive into this main topic. And that is, what is the best case scenario for Bitcoin and alts? And I'm going to pull up the ISM chart here and kind of show you guys some data that supports the bulls here, but also, dive into a possibility to where maybe this doesn't play out, right? Okay, so we are in the weekly chart, and this is the USB COI, which is the main, data for ISM purchasing index PMI. So if you can go all the way back to basically like September of 2013, when that first bull run started, and you can see here that, the ISM, right, was around 56 points. And this was kind of rising up whenever we had this bull run in 2013. And that was a long time ago, right? So you can just start correlating, this connection with the ISM and Bitcoin and really getting into risk on environment. And let me back up here a second and kind of explain to the people that don't know what the ISM is. So the ISM is the Institute for Supply Management, Manufacturing PMI, right? So it's a monthly survey of purchasing managers. It's a diffusion index, right? So above 50 means that things are getting pretty aggressive. Manufacturing in the U.S. is starting to expand. And then below 50, it's contracting, right? So we just hit 52.6 for our numbers in January. But now going back to this chart here, if you look at the bull run in 2013, it did line up with kind of like this ascension of the ISM PMI right here. And then you go fast forward about 3 or 4 years to the next cycle bull run. And you can see it kind of started here in the fall of 2017. And you can see the ISM was 60, right? And this is peak BTC bull. So we're talking about, getting up to that December of 2017 when Bitcoin was 20,000, right? And so again, it correlates, and that's after like it's been dipped in the bear market and then rising up here in the 2017 bull. And of course, as you guys know, that was the bull run that had the ICO meta, right? So a lot of people made a lot of money in that during that time period. And then you can fast forward again here, and if you go to here in the spring of 2021, so this bull run was a bit different because we had the double top, the double peak here, right? In February, March of 2021. And you can see that the ISM PMI was at 64 points here, right? So it's correlating the entire time for all these cycles. Now, let's go to where we are today, because this is where a lot of the bulls are trying to say that, hey, look, this is a big sign that we're seeing this ISM get to 52.6. And this is after kind of coming out of this, and then you can see we went sideways for a very long time, and then we just got the January numbers here at 52.6. Now, it is above what we did experience. Now, if you go to 2025, you can see in January, we did start to kind of peak up here, and we didn't really get going for, the year of 2025, except for Bitcoin. A lot of people feel like we did have a bull market with Bitcoin, in the late spring, in the summer. But if you go to those months, PMI wasn't really doing that great here, right? This ISM indicator was what we're looking at. Like maybe there was a couple times it got to like the high 40s, and then it dipped back down and then did it again. But here is why people are getting bullish. And you have really smart people that are Bitcoin analysts that talk about, basically where the trajectory of Bitcoin's going, like Benjamin Cohen. We've talked about him a lot on the show. And he is in the camp that thinks that this is the first time that the ISM won't align with Bitcoin, right? And so if you look back last year, we used a lot of data that was cyclical that didn't really work out for alt season, right? So could he be right? Yeah, he could be right. He could be right. But, I do think that we have to pay attention to it at least, right? So the one thing I will say, though, is if you look at all of these really aggressive, bull run time periods, the ISM is really getting more hyper aggressive, right? So I don't think we can just stop here at 52.6. We need to see this continually go up. And one thing I was looking at, and this is the weekly chart, was, this looked like it was about to get exhausted here in terms of, the momentum, right? You see the MACD right here. It looked like it was about to close up, and it looked like the ISM was not going to get aggressive. Now, this is kind of weird, the fact that it like just popped up here, at the when we started getting the data. But if it continues on and it continues aggressive to the upside, and it gets to 55 and it gets to possibly 60, we could see a scenario where the global liquidity aligns with Bitcoin and altcoins, right? And then we start to see Bitcoin and Ethereum possibly in the beginning of March start to, get aggressive to the upside, right? So, for me, I still need to see the ISM continually grow stronger here. I'm not satisfied with, this kind of pop up and almost out of nowhere, right? But I guess it has to start somewhere. But if we don't have a continuation with this to the upside, I don't expect Bitcoin to have a really strong bounce back, along with Ethereum and altcoins. So we still need some time to see if this is going to be a trend or if this is kind of just one-off type of situation with the ISM. So there's a lot of people on the bull side that do believe that this is the start to kind of like this manufacturing kind of renaissance, right? Again, to pop back up. And if you think about what Trump and this administration's been trying to do, it makes a lot of sense, for this to really go up. Now, I do think the sentiment around the current administration needs to get better still. And I don't know if this alone can really help crypto and Bitcoin and crypto have a resurgence here. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. And so we got to really wait and see, right? And another thing that I've been paying a lot of attention to is, before we get into that, let's look at the 3 months. So this is the quarterly ISM as well. So this is something too that kind of makes me think this could be a scenario that does play out to where the bulls think, right? Because if you look at the quarterly ISM, I mean, it's just getting started here, right? You see the momentum really just getting started. And so if that's the case, then we really could see this venture into, high 50s and low 60s. So then that spring kind of period, once winter's done, could be a really bullish environment here. But another thing we need to pay a lot of attention to is the USDT dominance. And if you look at this chart, you can see, what dominance looked like for every bull run, that how it correlates with every bull run, right? So you go back to 2017, because I don't think it went, USDT wasn't out in 2013, but you go back to 2017 and you can see right here that, as USDT dominance was going down is whenever the Bitcoin bull run was really getting started, right? And then you can see as the bear market started for Bitcoin, the USDT dominance was like getting aggressive to the upside. And it's happened every cycle. So right now, if you look right here and Bitcoin did, let's say Bitcoin did in fact have that bull run in the summer of 2025, then that would be kind of like whenever the dominance was going down here. And then it's been going up only after that, right? So that is definitely something that makes me worry a little bit as well. So that's why I need to see more with the ISM and make sure that is continually going up, and then seeing how Bitcoin is reacting to that. All right, let's take a look here at Bitcoin for today. Let's see how it's going at this very moment and kind of for the rest of the day. So you can see Bitcoin right now looks like on the hour chart, at least, yesterday I mentioned as it was trying to head to 80K that, I just wasn't confident with everything that's happening that we would be able to sustain, that upward trajectory for Bitcoin. And so that's how it played out. We got to, I think it was like 79, maybe 2 yesterday. And then it kind of reversed, right? And so right now we're sitting at 77,200, and you can see the MACD is showing that, the downtrend is continuing here, right? You see as well on the stochastic RSI that, it's having a hard time on the hour chart to get out of this. So, I think a continuation is going to happen here. We're going to probably push out. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see, maybe 76.5, 76,000 for the second half of today. It does look like that upward trajectory that we had yesterday is kind of reversed. And that makes sense. We did have a decent day yesterday for the current market sentiment that we're in right now. All right, let's take a look at the 4-hour chart for Bitcoin and see what's happening here. The 4-hour chart looks like the momentum is exhausted here. You can see that we are coming out of overbought territory for Bitcoin and heading down into, looks like it wants to head possibly to the oversold territory here. The MACD looks like it's starting to break down as well. So not too shocked here. One thing you do see with this, though, you do see like this downtrend kind of being halted and then going sideways a bit here, right? So as long as we don't have like a really, really strong bleed out and get back to 75K or below, I think we'll be okay. I think we'll just kind of have like a pendulum swing back to the downside for the price action here. All right, let's see what's going on with the daily for Bitcoin before we get into ETH. All right, so on the daily chart, just an extension here. It does look like it's possibly breaking down a little bit, but really just kind of the same theme. I feel like it's downtrend with consolidation, and we've been down here in oversold territory for a good minute, right? So it's going to take some really strong headlines, in my opinion, to pull us out and head back to the upside. So that's what I got for Bitcoin on today. Let's take a look at ETH real quick. It's going to be very similar. All right, ETH on the hour chart right here. So very, very similar situation here. You're seeing a continuation of the sell down happening with ETH, sitting at 2,200, 2266, which is really, really cheap for Ethereum. But probably going to head back down. I wouldn't be shocked if we see breaking down below 2,200 today, maybe getting to 2,150, maybe 2,100. So a lot of these altcoins are really starting to get pretty cheap as well, right? So you start wondering, when do we start accumulating and getting these assets that are on discount? I think we're close to that point right now, right? The 4-hour looks like it's starting to break down that buy pressure as well for Ethereum. So very, very similar to Bitcoin, right? And the daily, same thing, same situation for ETH on the daily chart as Bitcoin. So yeah, we just got to kind of see when we can kind of get out of this, right? That is where the focus is. Let's take a look at the alt market here, the crypto bubbles. For the top 100, you are seeing some bounce back actually on the day. This is interesting. You're seeing Hyperliquid pull up about 17%, and they've been in the news a ton lately, with their new smart contract that's going to be used for prediction markets to be able to hold liquidity on chain. That's probably pouring into what's happening here for this rise to the upside. Stacks, again, another green day for Stacks, up 17.5%. You're seeing Polygon bounce up here about 10%. And then Morpho up 9.5% here. Midnight up 5%. XMR pulling back about 5%. Zcash pulling back 4%. So it looks like privacy's taking a little hit here specifically, but I'm actually pretty shocked to see majority of the market, in the altcoin market green, right? Pepe up to 2%, barely up here. Aster up 6%. You got Virtuals up 3%, and then Crow up 5% here. Lit Protocol up almost 7%. So that's a good bounce up for Lit Protocol. Let's take a look at the top 200. We got River pulling back 43.3%. And B, which is this meme coin on BSC, pulling back about 8% here. And then Lombard, which I've seen in my timeline quite a bit, pulling up 6.2%. And Lombard is a stable coin. No, not a stable coin. Sorry, a wrapped Bitcoin that is on a lot of EVM chains. But then, some of the stuff that did pull back in the top 200, you're seeing like ZK pulling back about almost 6% here. Monad pulling back 2%. And then what else do we got in here that sticks out? I guess CBCN, which is I believe it's a Solana project that's related to like Bitcoin scalability. I know Courtney Johnson is big into CBCN here, but XCM pulling up 3.2% here as well. But yeah, that's pretty much Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the alt markets for you guys. I'm really, really shocked that the altcoin market is as green as it is, while Bitcoin and ETH is pulling back. So that's a good thing, showing a little bit of strength for the altcoins there. Let's see what's going on in the abstract world there. All right. All right, let's get into some news here. We're going to hit on the White House meeting with, all right, now I got that here. Right here. Okay. So the White House officials met with crypto banking reps to discuss stablecoins. This article that was written by Cointelegraph, it says officials in U.S. President Donald Trump's administration met with representatives from the cryptocurrency and banking industry to discuss how to address stablecoin yield in the market structure bill under consideration in the Senate. In a Monday X post, the Digital Chamber, a crypto advocacy organization, said its CEO, Cody Carbone, and others have met at the White House to discuss provisions within the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, for which a markup was postponed by the Senate Banking Committee in January. Among the issues lawmakers are expected to address before returning to markup were tokenized equities, decentralized finance, ethics for elected officials investing in crypto, and stablecoin rewards. I think the biggest key phrase here is stablecoin rewards. The banks and the financial institutions are terrified of losing deposits, right? Because they're afraid that their customers are going to start depositing or putting their cash into stable coins to be able to earn on chain, right? So we've known that they've been worried about this, and it's been holding up a lot of legislation, right? So I think this is a positive thing because it seems like the White House is really starting to get aggressive in terms of, trying to get the centralized crypto entities along with the banking institutions to compromise to some sort of solution to be able to push this framework forward. And you can hate the institutions and all that stuff, but if we're going to move forward as a space, we need this type of stuff to kind of be in the past, right? And if you look at stablecoin usage, look how much has increased. I mean, this is basically January's numbers, and you can see right here it says January stablecoin transaction volume reached 10 trillion, including 8.4 trillion from USDC Circle, right? And yeah, it did dip some in Q4. I mean, you can see right here in December, it dipped from a kind of a high in October to, I think it was about 6.5 trillion. And then November was about 5.5. Of course, October was the highest of 2025, because you have to remember people were trying to get into stablecoin whenever the market crashed, and we had the largest liquidation event in all of crypto, right? So now it's the interest is back, and banks and financial institutions know that they can also benefit from this. So it just makes sense to really get this kind of nipped in the bud. All right, next thing here, Tether is expanding their support for USDT, Tether Gold, and Opera's MiniPay wallet. Not that Tether needed to really expand their reach, but they're definitely going for it here. Another article here by Cointelegraph that says stablecoin issuer Tether said the initiative will help millions of users from emerging markets such as Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia with global financial inclusion. It also says stablecoin issuer Tether and web browser provider Opera have partnered to expand financial access in emerging markets through MiniPay stablecoin wallet app. Tether announced on Monday that was expanding support for its stablecoin USDT and Tether Gold XAUT with MiniPay, Opera's self-custodial wallet built on the CeLo blockchain. So, like, how much bigger can Tether get, right? I mean, they're literally trying to, I feel like be everywhere, a part of everything. And then also, whenever I was talking about how Tether has been purchasing so much gold, like they purchased 27 tons of gold in Q4 of 2025. But I forgot that they actually have a stable coin that is backed by gold. So that makes a lot of sense as well, right? So, them going into Africa and Latin America, these are like areas that don't have great infrastructure. But if you look at a lot of the research and you look at what the potential future looks like for these countries, they have the highest birth rates in Africa. They and Latin America. I don't know which region has higher, but they're much higher than the United States, Asia, and Europe, right? All those regions have really aggressive declining birth rates, but Africa and Latin America have been exploding when it comes to birth rates. So when you think about like infrastructure in the future, I think there's a lot of, these globalist type of powerful entities and groups of people that are looking at Africa and Latin America as like the future, because they're going to have the most 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds that are going to be able to build homes or work in general, take care of society, right? Whenever you have these other more established nations or continents like Europe and the US that have these declining birth rates. And so it makes sense for Tether to really take advantage of that as well. And it looks like that's what they're doing here. It goes on to say, the demand for stable coins, tokenized gold in emerging markets, This is something they're paying close attention to, which they should. They're obviously one of the strongest stablecoin providers. It says the mini app available on Android and iOS only requires a mobile phone number to activate. So they're also trying to keep it really limited with KYC information, right? Across all integrations, more than $153 million was sent or received through MiniPay in December, underscoring growing demand for stable dollar-based payments in mobile-first regions. So yeah, I mean, this is just another step in adoption, and I think this is really, really big, especially for Tether. I mean, they're continually just growing, right, and growing in power and just asset value. All right, let's see here. The government shutdown. So this is something that I think is important to talk about here. Obviously the government shutdown has been bad for markets, but there has been a really aggressive attempt by Mike Johnson and the Republicans to make sure that this doesn't last very long, right? And so earlier this morning, Polymarket had a 19% chance of the government shutdown to last 5+ days. This has now moved down to 14%, right? And you can go down the line here and you can see 6+ days, 4%. So basically, it seems like the shutdown is going to end, they're assuming today, because I think 5+ days would be tomorrow, would be the 5th day, I believe. And if it's not tomorrow, then I think the latest would be Thursday. So most people are optimistic that this shutdown is going to end today, probably. You did have Tom Emmert yesterday state that they are voting on this today. And I think at 11 o'clock Eastern, so that was about 30 minutes ago, they started the voting for this. The process to stop, get the government shutdown over and just kind of move on with everything here, which we definitely need to happen, because that is going to continually kill markets if this government shutdown continues. We saw what happened in Q4 as it, extended out to be, I think, the longest shutdown that we've ever had, and all the markets really suffered from that, right? All right, let's get into this here. All right, let's hit on this. Ethereum staking entry queued extends to 71 days. Take a look at this chart. This chart is pretty nuts here. You can see right here that we have, this is the highest it's ever been, right? If you go back, you can see the previous high point was June in what is this? June 23rd, right? So right when the summer started in 2025, and we were at about 40, I think we were at 48 days, right? Where the queue lasted here. You can see the exit started to pick up as well here in September, late September. People were trying to really just get out aggressively. And then we had the huge liquidation event and people were getting out. But now people are starting to stake again. So institutions have been pretty bullish on staking ETH. That has been one of the buying points for Ethereum. And, one of the reasons people continually stay bullish on ETH. And so this continually goes up here. And I think it will, this will continually go up. The attraction of Ethereum and proof of stake is just, it's really, really big for institutions. And I think it's just going to continually grow. And it's going to make it really, really hard for regular people to, in my opinion, be able to stake ETH at like the best rates. You're going to have to go through, these third-party servicers to stake your ETH, and it's just going to get harder and harder for that. All right. hit on this. So XAI has opened applications for a remote crypto expert role to help train and evaluate its frontier AI models. This is big because this shows that, X is getting more and more interested in focusing on crypto and digital assets, right? And so, they're going to be hiring a crypto expert to focus on how I think they're going to turn X into the everything app. And we all know that Elon has always wanted X to be like this payment company as well, or at least have payments be a large part of it. And whether that's from, his experience in PayPal or, whatever makes him want that, right? He's always wanted that. He's always discussed how he's wanted X to be a really big payments processing type of company. And this is going to be that next step for that. And then what does that look like as well? Am I going to be able to make a payment to you, like, somebody else I know on X directly? I know we can do certain things right now. There's a couple projects, I think, with Spark that you can integrate. There's probably some Solana things, but when X is actually integrating it into their, hard coding it into their infrastructure, I think that's whenever, making digital asset payments through X is going to be more and more mainstream. And then it also is going to create more headlines to bring more attention to our space overall, right? So I think this is really, really big for our space. And it's, when is this going to happen? That's the question, right? But when it does, I think then that's whenever we really take that next step for mainstream adoption. All right, let's take a look here. We got Bitcoin supply. This one's a little scary, guys. You can see here, Bitcoin supply and loss metric hits 44%, signaling potential bear market entry. So the supply that is out for holders right now, 44% of holders that are holding the current supply that is out is in a negative loss right now, right? But, a lot of people say once you reach this kind of area, this is whenever a lot of people feel like this is the bear market entry, right? So you can go back to 2022, whenever we were around that $60,000 mark, right? And then we pulled back, I think it was more than 44%, but we pulled all the way back down here below 20,000. And then, right now we're sitting at 70, I think we're sitting at about 76, but this chart shows 76.7. And that's coming down from obviously the 126. So is this going to be kind of like these bear market lows? That's the question. And I mean, if you go based off of where we were, I think we got further down to go, right? So, a lot of people are saying below 60,000 is on the table, right? And this is definitely not a good thing because 44% of people that got in probably in the last year are in loss and they're hurting here. So does it continually go down? Do we break down below that? That is the question, and that definitely wouldn't be good because then we could see some sort of free fall as well, right? But this is definitely something that worries me, and stuff like this also is what kind of concerns me about the ISM data, right? Because the ISM data is what the bulls are kind of banking on, but then you see stuff like this, right? And it just kind of screams that we're in this bear market. And how long will the bear market last? That's the question that everybody is trying to answer. All right. Here's another kind of mainstream adoption situation here. Y Combinator is going to start allowing their founders to receive funding in stablecoin USDC, right? So Circle's getting involved with this as well. So they used to do, just straight wire funds for their potential, the incubators, the projects that they're incubating. And also, don't forget, Y Combinator has really incubated a couple huge founders. You can look here. It says Y Combinator, whose alumni includes founders of Airbnb and DoorDash. I mean, those are two really, really big companies that have had success. And Y Combinator is obviously a highly, highly respected incubator out of Silicon Valley, right? And we know that they've been getting more and more involved with digital asset companies. So let's kind of get into this. It says, in the latest sign of digital currencies going mainstream, Silicon Valley's most prominent startup incubator will allow its spring cohort of entrepreneurs to receive their funding in stablecoins. Y Combinator, whose alumni includes, I mentioned this, the founders of Airbnb and DoorDash, announced on Tuesday that founders can opt to receive their customary allotment, typically around 500K, in the Circle issued USDC. Startup founders who choose stablecoins can choose to receive the tokens on various blockchains such as Ethereum and Solana. Visiting, Y Combinator, who focuses on crypto, says he added that Y Combinator may expand to other stablecoins depending on demand. Stablecoins is one of the key pillars for us, Dalal said, referring to one of the areas where Y Combinator would like to see more startup ideas. So we just want to live and breathe that as well. So they're just, really diving into, the digital asset space. And this is big because this is, a part of innovation, right? They, as I mentioned, have incubated, these type of companies, Airbnb and DoorDash, which are huge companies that came out of Silicon Valley. So, offering stablecoin is a really big deal in my opinion, but it kind of goes with all the stuff that's trying to be pushed during this administration's term with infrastructure and institutions kind of coming in, right? And we'll see more and more of this. I really do believe that, right? All right, let's get into some Bitcoin ecosystem stuff. There is a announcement from, I think it's Best in Slot here. Yeah, Best in Slot. And you can see that BRC 2.0 phase 2 is starting with rats, right? And if you go to their post here, it says right here, and this was posted yesterday, but everybody's starting to really pay attention to rats and Ordi. But it says BRC 20 phase 2 coming soon to Bitcoin mainnet. Before that, don't forget to join our massive giveaway below. 20 winners split $1,000 in BTC, $500 in Ordi, and $500 in Nutkin. So I don't know if this is still happening, but you might want to head over there and drop your Bitcoin wallet. But Best in Slot is doing this giveaway, right? But here is kind of a more in-depth kind of detail of what's happening. Programmability and smart contracts all coming in BRC 20 tokens. So this is an announcement of basically starting to focus on the legacy BRC 20 tokens, right? Because they already, established the new versions of the BRC 20 2.0 tokens with GameFi and Acorns, right? And then you got basically this phase 2 that's going to upgrade Ordi, Sats, Rats. I'm not sure if Track is going to be in there because Track's kind of done their thing, but they're one of the well-known BRC 20s. And so this is supposed to happen today, right? And yesterday I talked about the Dreamers Mint that Hype was launching yesterday, and you actually pay in the Ordi token for that mint. Right. So this is something that is starting to move now. Right. Which I think is a good thing for the overall Bitcoin ecosystem as well. Right. Because, yes, do I think Runes is going to do well? I think the Runes ecosystem is going to do well eventually. They have a lot of leadership. They have a lot of strong communities there. But I also think that the BRC 20 ecosystem has an opportunity as well. They've taken a little bit of a different approach. and they're integrating EVM into the BRC20 standard, and they have these smart contracts that they're utilizing for their BRC20. So we'll see where this goes, but I'm excited to kind of mess around with it. We all know that tokens like RATS got to like $800 million market cap. Already got to $1.5 billion market cap. You had SATs that got to like $1.3 billion market cap. Now, of course, a lot of those tokens have pulled back, but if this scaling solution is a really good UX and can be fast and liquidity living with these tokens, then we could see a resurgence of some of these tickers. All right, let's kind of check out some other stuff that's happening. I do suggest that you guys follow Barbara. This is the second time I brought her up. Man, she does a great ordinals catch up with Barbara, where she breaks down different areas of the space, right? And she put out an update, and her X ticker is at that WAGMI girl. And you can kind of go through these updates, right? Honestly, she makes it easy for me. And so I definitely want to give her credit. And we just hit on the BRC20 phase 2 upgrade. And then you see right here, it says another update in the Bitcoin ecosystem, RadFi, which is a runes trading platform on Bitcoin Layer 1, says makes an important decision to move the trading competition to next week. So they had a trading competition, and they did push that back because they did find some efficiencies in UTXO selection. But one of the things about Scott and his team at RadFi is they are really trying to push the envelope on Bitcoin Layer 1. And so they're just constantly trying to make it a better experience. And one of the things that they've done is try to make that kind of limitation per block for transactions better. And, I've seen a lot of effort from him and his team, and it seems like they're right on the cusp of some breakthroughs there. Then you got Sats Terminal, which, was once a partner of OnChain Revolution. They have really been focused on having Bitcoin, earning off of your Bitcoin, right? They integrated a native BTC wallet into their Borrow aggregator platform, right? And then Launchpad Hot, which is the platform that Dreamers used yesterday. I'm not sure if Hyatt actually built that, but this is the platform that the Dreamers Mint launched on there. And then you got Runelings finally airdrop. So they airdropped their Lings token. And for the people that are wondering, what is Runelings? I believe Runelings is like the Runes project that is based off of the Hashlings. And it looks like it's available for trading on Magic Eden. And the final thing here is Ordinal Maxi Biz, which is a popular Ordinals collection. Their Red Eye sold for 0.425. Wow. So really big sell, $33,000 sell for OMB in that collection. $33,000. That's crazy. So congratulations to whoever sold that, for sure. What is up, Stan? He says, I have to get back into ordinals. Yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest to get back into right now, just because, it has its ups and downs in terms of attention, right? But I do think that the ordinal ecosystem is definitely going to have a strong bounce back once liquidity comes back. And he also says, any opinion on Liquidium? Yeah, actually, I have strong opinions on Liquidium. I think Liquidium is a really strong project, and I think they're a really strong company, right? I think Robin and James do an amazing job to run Liquidium. Look, I mean, Liquidium has done a ton of volume and loans for Bitcoin Layer 1 assets, and that's not easy to do. That is not easy to do at all, right? In the beginning, it was in 2023, but as we got into 2024 and 2025, as volume and attention started going down, they were still able to maintain, some good volume. And I think they're going to be a great example of a company / project that stuck with the Bitcoin ecosystem through the ups and downs, and will eventually be able to, get the great benefits from sticking through it all. Dr. Men says, good morning. What is up, Dr. Men? And then we got Rick G in the house. What is up? Rick G says, long live on-chain revolution. Thank you. He says LFG. And then he says, use Liquidium like a pawn shop. Only use if you have to. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that you can get caught up in, getting some ordinals, liquidated because the market isn't going well, right? And but that's with anything, that's with any type of leverage. That's with any type of gambling situation to where you can get yourself in trouble, right? And so that's where people I've seen in the past get in trouble with Liquidium, or just using those type of loans against your asset type situations. But what else do we have here? I think that is it for Bitcoin ecosystem. Look how in depth she goes too. She hits on the coffee. She has like this little coffee section. Man, yeah, make sure you guys do follow Barbara for sure. And then there's like an even more, it goes even deeper, the alpha, where there's some more of a, I guess, like secret type of information. And I think that's the way she does it is smart too. She wants you to keep scrolling down and not just like me. What I did was look at the beginning parts of the post, and you can get deeper into kind of, the alpha. Maybe she's saving like the best parts of this at the bottom, but the alpha part says Breeze Tech releases Breeze Claw that allows AI agents to move autonomously. And then keep an eye on Sats Terminal. Looks like they have a big announcement today, so make sure you guys are over there at Sats Terminal as well. And then keep an eye on MotoSwap. The MotoCats have been doing that. Is another thing too. MotoCats, I've seen them, which is Danny and those guys from OpNet, right? And I don't know if they went to BSV and started building as well over there, but I have seen MotoSwap in the ordinal collections on my timeline for sure a lot more lately. Yeah, but that is pretty much what's going on in terms of updates. Let's take a look here at some of the ordinal collections, because I am interested to see if OMB jumped up on the daily from that. You can see the daily for the ordinal collections here, what is basically performing well. Let me not do that because I don't want to. Let me bring it back to how I had it before. I feel like some of these that are one-off sells, I don't want to have that in there. All right, Taproot Wizards. The floor of Taproot Wizards is 4,400 here, down about 2%. Runestone. So someone was talking to me about Runestones the other day, and I actually feel like Runestones, this collection could be one of the most collectible ordinals collections, and I don't even have any, right? And one of the reasons why I say that is because just the lore behind how Dog launched and how, these runestones were airdropped to people that just participated in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And, it depended upon like how much you inscribed to see how many runestones you get, right? And so right now they're sitting at $75. Of course, the overall market's bad. Dog's kind of down as well. And so I think that these are starting to get pretty cheap. And in the long run, though, if you think maybe like a couple years down the road, Runestones could be a collectible, a highly collectible ordinal. That is for sure. And then here you go. MotoCat Racing up about 10%. They must be doing some sort of airdrop if you're holding this. Node Monks, which this might be controversial opinion, but Node Monks is my favorite ordinal collection, and I don't have any anymore. I do want to pick some more up though. I'm hoping that they get cheaper, but I really like Node Monks because I like the actual like art of them. They have that 8-bit kind of style to them. And then also their inscription numbers are really, really low as well. And then Bitmap below that, it is up a little bit today, but sitting at $4, man. At one point, these were at, I want to say, like the floor price was like $300, right? Node Monks had a floor price of like $50,000, and they're sitting at $1,600. So You got to remember those prices, right? Because let's say that the Bitcoin ecosystem does have a resurgence, right? And we have like this crazy, liquid environment, which I think that's going to happen, by the way. Then if the all-time high for node monks was $50,000 floor, imagine what the next all-time high would be in a highly liquid environment. I would not be shocked if we're talking about mid six figures, right? Again, we have to be in a highly liquid environment, though. You got the Bitcoin puppets, which have been one of the most popular collections in all of ordinals, sitting at $760. I've always felt like the puppets do the best whenever there's liquidity around, right? And that people are going to say, well, that's obvious. Yeah, but I think the energy comes back the most whenever there's money here, right? And so right now it's sitting here pretty cheap, because there was moments where it was definitely higher than node monks and some of these other collections. And you see O and B right here sitting right below $1,000, down about 10%. Quantum Cats below 1,000 too, right below 1,000, up about 4% here as well. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for ordinals, guys. Let's check some runes here, because there's a lot of people that are in dog. If you look at the timeline, if you look at the community, Leonidas is continually pushing every day. He's obviously in this kind of war right now with CZ, but maybe that's good. Maybe that's helping more exposure for dog in the community. But it's sitting at 108 million. The lowest I've ever seen dog was probably, I think, at like maybe 80 something million or 90 million. So I think it's cheap. And you still have really large accounts that aren't just shilling it to dump on people. They're still talking about it. You have Dan, I forget his last name, from the Cardano community, very, very into dog still. Windy O still into it as well. And then you got Magic Internet Money sitting here at 8 million. So this bounced back up a little bit. I know it's down on the 7 day, so maybe it did bounce back down a little bit. So yeah, sitting here down 3%. I thought it was a little bit lower. I thought it was sitting at 6 million, but I guess I was wrong there. Uncommon Goods, a lot of people are bullish on this long term. It's sitting at 1.2 million. This is the runes token that Casey launched here. And the way that Uncommon Goods works is that there is a basically supply release off of every block, and the supply will stop, I believe, at the next halving, right? So we're talking 2024. So I think 2028 is whenever the supply will stop. So people are, thinking about getting into Uncommon Goods as we get closer to the next halving, as people are going to be anticipating that the supply shock is going to happen. That is if runes and, the Bitcoin ecosystem bounces back, which I completely think it does. And I know that there's probably some people listening in thinking that I'm crazy, that it's going to bounce back. But I do think it's going to bounce back because, people reference the counterparty era, right? In 2015, 2016, and going, even further than that. But you have to remember that this on-chain economy that Bitcoin had in 2023 was by far the largest on-chain economy we've ever seen. So big that it created so many different meta protocols. And most of you guys remember this. You have to remember that, like, when Counterparty happened, it was like Counterparty, right? Maybe there was a competing meta protocol here and there. Whenever ordinals happened in 2023, you had BRC20, which is technically another meta protocol, right? A fungible token standard. Yes, it uses inscriptions and those type of things. But then you had ARC20, atomicals. And then you had eventually, TAP. And then you had runes. And then you had, what was the motocross guys? I forgot what theirs was called, right? So you had all of these different meta protocols because they saw the opportunity of how much liquidity was being kind of passed in and out of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And that leaves a permanent, that type of like event leaves a permanent mark on people. And that's why you still have Leonidas that has over 200 and I don't know how many thousand followers he has, but a ton of followers still pushing hard today. You think that these people are going to stop? They're not, right? So once the liquidity comes right, I think most of these these assets in this ecosystem is going to benefit. Now, there's going to be a good amount that probably forgot, a lot of ordinal collections that the founders didn't keep pushing, or they weren't early inscriptions as well. And so you have, if you don't have an early inscription meta or something like that, you're a founder, you have to keep pushing the community. And a lot of people gave up on that, right? But the ones that didn't, I think that they're going to benefit in the early inscription meta, which was, I think, brilliant because it makes it more, unique and rare. What is up, Eric? Erdrick Grave. He says, it's okay. Dog didn't go to the moon. Nobody ever has. Yeah. I mean, look, there's still, hey, it went to a moon. It went close to a moon. It was at 900 and something million dollar market cap, which is huge, right? And it's still sitting at over 100 million. So I still think that there is time. Rick G says Dan Gambardello. Yes, 88. That's who I meant. Dan Gambardello. And then Stan says Dog is at war with CZ. Wow, that's news to me. I have to grab some. I mean, everybody's at war with CZ right now. I feel like he's starting to crack a little bit under the pressure, or at least it seems that way. All right, let's take a look and see if there's any other $1 billion cat sitting at 2.2 million. I feel like that's pretty cheap. And, if you think about like the hardest times of runes, this has to be one of them. And there's been a lot of hard times for runes, right? But if this is like zero, if you're thinking about like these tokens being at like their zero moment, 2.29 million isn't horrible, right? Now when you do compare that to, I think it got to like 150 million at one point. Obviously that hurts for the people that got in during that time. But I do feel like Billy is very brandable. I've always said that. And so I think there's going to be a resurgence there as well. And then you can kind of go through some of these. Some of these are, we've hit on most of the big ones, but I think there's another website called 99 Bitcoins, maybe. What is it? No, I got to figure it out. But there's another, Runes website that has basically all of the tokens, and you can kind of see the market caps, because there's a couple that are living in like Odin.fun. There's Crypto Berg, right? Let me visit that one real quick. Odin.fun. Crypto Berg is basically, you look at the tokens here, it's pretty crazy, right? Crypto Berg is sitting at $276 million market cap, right? And it's a rune that was etched on Bitcoin Layer 1 as well. So the way that Odin.fun works is Bob Bodley actually built this platform, and he used ICP's tech stack to kind of make it a fast environment, right? So whenever you launch a token here, it etches that token once it mints out, or once it bonds. It also etches the token on Bitcoin Layer 1, so you can actually bridge back and forth. So technically, this is the highest market cap right now for all tokens. You see Crypto Berg here sitting at $276 million market cap. And if some people say, well, the volume isn't there. I mean, look at this, $6.34 million volume is absolutely crazy, right? And then you go to Rich Swap as well, which is another very similar version of Odin.fun. They use ICP's tech stack as well, right? And you can see these market caps over here. You got 7Z. I mean, it's smaller. This one's at like 230,000. Hope you get rich. These aren't market caps, actually. These are the TVL. But you can see on this platform as well, you can see other market caps. And these are all Bitcoin runes as well. They take the same approach. And some of these are, like you see Dog Go to the Moon here as well. Lamb Wolf, it launched on their basically their pump fund, which is called satsman.fun. And you got Odin Dog here as well, and Force Eddy Scan. So there's a lot of people building in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and we got to pay attention to them, right? I think it's important to get familiarized with these these platforms that are easier to use than just buying on Magic Eden, which is Bitcoin layer 1. They're trying to make these make Bitcoin layer 1 assets more flexible, and I think they've done a good job, right? And they'll continually build here. But I think that's going to wrap it up, guys. Been going for a little bit more than an hour. I appreciate all you guys jumping in the chat. Rick, love to have you back here. Says Superfan says Bob is a great guy. I met him once, really easygoing. Yeah, I actually met Bob in Nashville. We were both in the media room. It was actually when Trump was speaking at the conference, the Bitcoin conference in Nashville, and met Bob, talked to him, cut it up with him. He's been on the show multiple times as well. He's an amazing guy, like you said. Really, really smart dude, though. But that is going to wrap it up for the show, guys. I appreciate you guys, supporting the show. Without you guys, I couldn't do the show for sure. Also, without my partners, I couldn't do it as well. So if you could check them out, I would greatly appreciate that. Let's see here. Let me pull up their site here. If you could check out Merlin Chain, go to merlinchain.io. You can head over to their staking link here, and you can stake your Bitcoin to earn more Bitcoin. They have really good APR. They try to shoot between 8 and 21%. That's their goal. It is a 3-month lockup, so just know that. And then also you can stake the Merlin Chain token. There's 2 options. There's the flexible day-to-day, which is a 15% lockup. 15% APR for a daily lockup. If you do want to withdraw, though, there is a 7-day cooldown period, but you can claim your rewards every single day. And then there's a 6-month lockup called the bonded option with the Merlin Chain token. You earn 45% APR, but it is locked up for 6 months, but you can claim your rewards every single day on that one as well. And then if you could head over to sassman.fun, it is, like I mentioned, the pump fund of Bitcoin. You can launch a token here. It's real simple. You etch the runes ticker on Bitcoin layer 1, then you launch the token. Once it mints out, all that liquidity gets sent over to RichSwap, and then you earn 1% of the transaction fee volume, right? So you can definitely earn as well. And as I mentioned, it gets sent over to RichSwap once it mints out. So very, very similar to a pump fund, except for the cool thing is if it doesn't mint out and you participate in it, you get your Bitcoin back. So you don't really lose there. So the risk is definitely better than something like pump fund. But yeah, appreciate you guys. Head over to onchainrevolution.io. You can see some daily articles there. Other than that, I will check you guys tomorrow. Peace.